Look, the war is going to end. When it ends, I can't tell you.
President Trump hosts a meeting of world leaders at the White House aimed at ending Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Russia weighs in with a heavy barrage of drones and missiles.
From CBS News headquarters in New York, this is the CBS Evening News.
Good evening, I'm John Dickerson. Maurice Dubois is off tonight. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy returned to the White House today, 171 days after his tense Oval Office confrontation with President Trump. This time, Zelenskyy was greeted warmly, and he received President Trump's assurances that the U.S. would be involved in protecting his country after the war ends. After 3.5 years of war, nearly 1.5 million troops have been killed or wounded, with Russia bearing more than twice as many casualties. Russia controls roughly 20% of what was Ukrainian territory. Since 2022, the U.S. has contributed more than $130 billion in total aid to Ukraine. Holly Williams reports from Ukraine, and we'll turn to her in a moment. But first, Nancy Cordes is at the White House, where Presidents Trump and Zelenskyy were joined by several other European leaders. And Nancy, there seems to be some kind of early signs of progress today.
There does indeed, John. Tonight, the president says he has begun to make arrangements for a meeting between Putin and Zelenskyy, which would be a first if it happens. Trump spoke to Putin by phone after meeting with Zelenskyy and a host of European power players for about 5 hours and easing some of their fears that he might be siding with Putin.
Thank you, Mr. President, for organizing this meeting.
It was a striking show of support for Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy. The leaders of France, Italy, the UK, and more all arrayed around a table with him and President Trump to talk peace.
Something is changing. Something has changed thanks to you.
Their tone was friendly, but their message was designed to gently counteract Trump's chummy meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin in Alaska on Friday, where Putin convinced Trump to drop his demand for a ceasefire as a prelude to a more lasting peace deal. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz.
I can't imagine that the next meeting would take place without a ceasefire. So let's work on that, and let's try to put pressure on Russia.
In the 6 wars that I've settled, I haven't had a ceasefire.
The European leaders were also alarmed by Trump's seeming openness to Putin's latest proposal, which would involve Ukraine handing over the entire Donbas region, including a 2,600 square mile swath that Russian troops do not currently control. Putin also reportedly proposed that the rest of the battle lines be frozen in place, which would give Russia de facto control over more than 20% of Ukrainian territory.
The war is going to end.
In the Oval Office today, there was none of the tension that marred Zelenskyy's last visit 6 months ago.
You got to be more thankful, because let me tell you, you don't have the cards.
Today, Trump left the door open to post-war U.S. peacekeeping troops who would help prevent a repeat invasion of Ukraine.
This is such an important issue.
That was a big relief to all the leaders, Zelenskyy most of all.
This is very important that the United States gives such strong signal and is ready for security guarantees.
Nancy, you've watched a lot of these foreign leaders interact with the president. What struck you about today?
Well, John, for starters, they've clearly all learned what works with President Trump, and aggressive pushback often does not. But there also seemed to be genuine gratitude that at least this conversation with Putin is finally taking place, even if it isn't taking place exactly the way they want it to.
And Nancy, there seems to have been specific discussion about security guarantees for Ukraine. Was there any specificity, or what level of it, about the question of territory, land?
No, Trump aides said that would be a major topic of conversation today, but Zelenskyy pushed back. He said that any talk about territory needs to wait until he's sitting face-to-face with Vladimir Putin, where they're both making concessions. President Trump seemed to respect that, and he said he's going to try to set up that meeting as soon as possible, John.
Nancy Cordes at the White House. Thank you, Nancy. Russia launched a heavy wave of drones and missiles on Ukraine overnight, hitting more than 24 locations. Holly Williams has been covering Russia's invasion since it started, and she reports tonight from the capital city of Kyiv.
Just before sunrise this morning, Ukraine says a swarm of Russian drones destroyed part of this apartment complex in the city of Kharkiv. The attack killed at least 5, according to local officials. Rescue workers tried to save this baby girl, but she didn't survive. There were many families living here, small children, said this woman. There are no officers here or anything else. Ukrainians have fought courageously to defend their country. But Vladimir Putin's forces now have the upper hand on the battlefield. Many Ukrainians are sceptical that he really wants peace or will stick to any agreement he signs, because he's broken them in the past. Some here are furious that President Trump appears to be pressuring Ukraine to make concessions. Their meetings and talks are a pure circus, said this woman in Kyiv. I think Trump is pro-Russian. And this woman simply said that President Trump is a traitor.
And Holly Williams joins us now from Kyiv. Holly, how many reporting trips have you taken to Ukraine?
John, we were here in 2022 when the invasion began, and I think it's my 12th visit since then. But I've been reporting from Ukraine since 2014, when Ukrainians toppled their then pro-Russian government, just down the street here.
How has the spirit of the Ukrainian people changed between when you started and now?
John, the Ukrainians have been fighting so defiantly, but there's also no question that they're exhausted, and they've taken hundreds of thousands of casualties. In fact, a recent poll found that nearly 70% of Ukrainians now support a negotiated peace deal. That's up from just over 20% at the start of the invasion.
Given that fatigue, if the U.S. and Europe could promise security guarantees that Russia would be blocked from doing this again, might the Ukrainians accept a loss of some land?
I think there's no consensus. I think some Ukrainians would see any territorial concessions as a capitulation. Others might be willing to accept them. But I think all Ukrainians know that international agreements have failed to protect them in the past. So why would it be any different this time around?
Holly Williams in Kyiv. Thank you, Holly.